morning, everyone. We're excited to get started with our next session. I'm incredibly excited to introduce the new ROI, Return on Innovation with Zeta's Roadmap. Two of my favorite people at Zeta, who I've had the pleasure to partner with really closely, Chris Monberg, our Chief Technology Officer and Head of Product at Zeta, and Matt Mobley, President of CRM. Thanks, guys. Looking forward to seeing all the innovation.
Thanks, Winnie. You are also one of my favorites. I'm Chris Monberg, CTO, Head of Product. Matt's going to be joining me shortly to talk about some of the applied roadmap. We want to talk about why we're doing what we're doing, because it's important to us. It keeps everybody aligned. It's also important to a lot of our customers because they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in the future. Talk a little bit about what we are doing right now. Matt's going to apply it, and then we'll finish up with where we're going. So it is an incredible honor to represent so many smart people around the globe. We have offices in just about every continent, save the real icy one, and I get to represent their work. I couldn't do it without the hundreds of people that are working on this every day to build the platform. The other part of that is recognition. It's great. It feels nice for me to stand up here and say we do great work. It feels better sometimes to have other people validate our work so that I'm not full of it. This year's brought a lot of analyst coverage. David Hybels is in the crowd somewhere, working closely with our analysts every day. And they say things like we're a leader in the Forrester Wave. They say that we have the most complete CDP in the market. And meanwhile, our platform is growing quickly. Year to date, from January to 2 days ago when I did this slide, we're up 128% in usage on the platform. So we're scaling really nicely. People are using us more and more. Hopefully everybody here knows what Zeta does, and we are building a marketing cloud. We think that we need to build the most advanced marketing cloud, and that's a nice lofty ambition, and I'm a technologist, so I like the technology part of it, but it's about outcomes. And yesterday we talked to a lot of customers and investors about what those outcomes mean. How are we different? Every other marketing cloud says the same thing, and I think it's a bit of a mess for buyers to understand what's out there. They paint a beautiful picture of what it's going to look like, but when you start integrating the pieces and they stack up, the glue doesn't hold, the nails don't hold, and it fractures and falls to the ground. And everybody I've spoken to over the last couple of days have said the same thing. It's like, well, how do I get data from here to there? How do I make my insights actionable? And it's a hard thing to figure out, especially if you're working on technology that's maybe 15 or 20 years old, or if it was stapled together through a bunch of acquisitions. Right now, it's probably hotter than ever, specifically like this week. There's announcements from other big marketing clouds out there saying that, my wife calling, there's clouds putting out big announcements of what it should be. There's cartoons and illustrations of what it could be. And it's still hard to figure out if it's true or not. I think it's pretty overhyped. I think the whole market's overhyped. And as a buyer, as a user every day, how do you get into something that makes your life better? And Zeta's probably a little bit guilty of it too, of making bombastic claims. But the people that are in the platform, we want to make those jobs simpler. Yesterday, during an investor presentation, I was blown away. We were blessed to have three customers take a lot of questions from investors, and they're pretty authentic. They're like, oh, this could be a little bit better, but it makes my life simpler. I don't have to wait 10 days for data to offboard and go through identity onboarding and move it from one place to another. So there are no new cartoons here today. This results in you just buying more and more technology. We'll talk about CDPs today, and Zeta has a CDP. It's very central to what we do. By that, I mean it's part of the platform. In the market, it kind of expresses itself as one more acronym to buy, and a lot of customers will call and say, hey, we bought a CDP. What else? We need to buy a CRM, we need to buy an ESP, we need to buy a DSP, we need to buy keep the three-letter acronyms going, and then they'll realize what they said, and they'll call back and say, I think this is too complicated. It doesn't all work together. How would you fix things? And every organization is unique. I'll talk about an idealistic approach, but it's not real to hop directly into what we would call a point of arrival. You've got to take the journey. So a couple years ago, a lot of analysts talk about a system of insight and a system of engagement. That's the way they thought about a marketing stack. You had to go buy a system of insight or create one, and then you also had to use those insights. The challenge that we saw, and I think you have all been through it, is that they didn't talk to each other very nicely. Maybe you could like export some audiences from a system of insight into a system of engagement, but it was two different workflows. That's frustrating, and that's not just the start of it. There's also a system of data, a system of identity, analytics, system of record kind of fits in between these, so this would be like master data management, and then a system of attribution, which also has to be tied all the way back to your system of identity. And by the time you spend a lot of hours trying to get these to tie together, you're making changes elsewhere in your stack. Somebody heard about a new tool, they want to procure it, they've got a friend that started a company, they want to bring in new data, whatever it is. So it's really easy for me to say it falls apart if you don't tie it together. There are companies out there that do have incredible ops teams and development teams in-house. They do a great job. There's teams that can't make that a priority because those ops and development teams have other priorities. So I can say there's a perfect integrated solution out there. It doesn't do you much good today because I would fair to say every brand that's represented in here is on a digital maturation curve. They're going through digital transformation. They've brought in maybe Snowflake, and Snowflake's now their big centralized data store, and they're trying to figure out how to use that data more broadly, and that's where Zeta kind of comes in. So this complexity takes time, and it takes a lot of people, and it's crazy because we're just trying to understand people. It doesn't seem that hard. We call her Vanessa. I don't know what her real name is. We spend a lot of time and a lot of technology just to like build some digital analog of empathy and understanding of people, and it's so hard to do it, but in the real world it's so easy. I met many of you this week, and I learned about your growing up in Canada, or I learn about what you do on your weekends, and it's pretty easy as a human to do it, and I think this is the big change. I'm not talking about like AI taking over the world and understanding everybody's wants and desires in a completely humanistic way, but we need to at least remove the complexity that prevents us from understanding individuals. This is a slide that I've used before. The cockpit of the space shuttle for NASA, it changed a lot. Like these screens became digital, and I'm big into aviation, so I probably dork out afterwards if anybody wants to talk about it. But as the space shuttle got more and more advanced over the course of 50 years, they would kind of take out one control unit and put another one, and the binder just got thicker. Instead of like a rheostat you change to land on the moon or whatever you did to land on the moon, you got like new screens with new soft buttons and bigger manuals, and it's really hard to use. Like you've got to study for a long time, which is probably a good thing. You don't want space shuttle cowboys driving space shuttles wherever they want to go. Fast forward to a couple years ago, and most of you saw the Dragon X Shuttle, which looked a little bit more like what all of us would expect. It's like getting in a new car. Some of them are complicated, some of them are really tastefully done, but it's moving the affordance of the job that you have to do forward. And the way I like to think about this is that there's massive complexity in what marketers do, but it doesn't have to be that way. There can be a sophisticated solution where things just work. I'll make it a real example. You've got a bunch of people on your email list and you want to target them through programmatic. There's teams out there today that you have to go through like 5 steps to get there, and it takes anywhere between weeks and frankly over a month for a lot of people to go through those steps of exporting and trying to get it in the right identity space and then re-onboarding it. Doesn't it seem like you should just be able to say, hey, I'd like to be able to talk to these people wherever they're at right now and like click a button? Isn't that 2022? I don't have one, but my friends' cars drive them home from work. I'm sure we can figure this out. It's just a new paradigm change. So this is a lot of why we do it. And we talked about this last Zeta Live for the first time, and it's kind of stuck. We've talked to a lot of clients, and they're like, yeah, I want to have sophisticated marketing. I want to be able to land a space shuttle standing up and then take it off again, but I don't want all the complexities go with it. So how do we make it simple? The trick is you do it kind of one bit at a time. And it's the small changes that make things simple. At Zeta, we ship about 120 epics every quarter, and a lot of those are just simple updates, feedback from customers, from the customer advisory board, which many of you are a part of. We want to continue on that track. The way we do it at Zeta is through core beliefs. Like we start with a grounded ethos. data layer. I'm going to draw the Zeta stack, the Zeta marketing platform stack here. Starts with data at the bottom. We believe that the most advanced marketing cloud needs to have access to proprietary and a strong ID graph, and it needs to have access to data. Most of you are probably buying data. We want to make that easier for you. Most of you probably work with identity onboarders. We want to make that easier for you, and it needs to stick together. Next, you take data and you can come up with insights and opportunities. My wife's in marketing, and she spends a lot of time in spreadsheets. And I think it's hard for somebody who's trying to understand an individual and run day-to-day marketing campaigns. One of our customers said yesterday they run 50 campaigns a day with a team of 3. How do you enable them to be more of a behavioral psychologist? How do you take the insights and do the heavy lifting for them so they're not downloading data from a database into Excel and trying to run their models on it without a real tight feedback loop? You want that integrated. Integrated data helps for it. The next step up is experiences. We talk a lot about acquisition and retention coming together. I don't mean those jobs and those individuals are going to have the same, are going to unify. What I mean is that they're both going to come together around a common understanding of the individual. I shop at Patagonia. Patagonia still doesn't tie me together with their acquisition retention use cases. Anybody's from Patagonia, I hope I'm not offending you, and I hope I'm right. They target me with email and retention, and then they get me on Instagram for the same offers, the same jacket I've had for a long time. Lucky for them, sometimes I stay up late and decide I need a new Patagonia jacket, so it probably works out okay. But again, they can do better if they had better solutions on the tech stack. And then last, outcomes. When I started in this business, the adage was CMOs had a tenure of like 14 months, the shortest C-suite tenure. That's changed quite a bit. And I think it's because CMOs have the tooling to talk about business outcomes rather than clicks. You can't go to your CEO and say, oh, I got 400 Facebook likes. You say, so what? How many shoes did you sell? So we want to make a platform that ties all of those things together. Through this rubric, we're able to align it to our actual platform. So one stack that's cohesive across all channels, all attribution flows through it, no add-ons, no changing from one domain space to the next. And we've got 10 core modules is the way we think about it. Those have lots of sub-modules that we turn on and off. An example would be data manager. You might need rich hygiene done to your data as it comes in, or you may just be bringing in digital data. We can turn on the hygiene sub-module if we need to make that stuff really good. It is literally a toggle that goes from white to green in the back of the platform because it's one. So the next piece is our brands that we work with already have their stack, and this is a really simplified stack. I think I said earlier that they might have 15 different technologies. We want to wrap around your existing business. We know you've got great partners. Some of them may be vendors aspiring to be partners, but we don't want to go in and replace everybody at once because it's too hard, it's too confusing, and it's a curve, it's a journey, it's a maturation curve. We want to be on that journey with you. But we do believe as you go through your digital maturation and you change your stack, maybe you do choose to go with Snowflake and you use Looker, and maybe you keep an SMS provider, that we can continue growing with you, and we want to help you get more value out of those investments along the way. So Looker now actually sits in the platform so everybody can see it. It's one login. You don't have to have 2 different systems. Data in Snowflake would be accessible anywhere. And these are examples. There are many others we can point to. So one point on this is that this stack is going to wrap around your business, but there's still 3-letter acronyms to buy. One of them that we do like talking about is the CDP. There's experiences and people, really simply what a CDP is. And that stack helps us deliver value at each level of a CDP. I said it before, and I'll try and leave it alone, but CDP has to be the soul of what you're doing. And you can put an acronym on it, you can put a label on it, but unless it's working to connect identity and data in real time across your whole stack, and insights are part of it, and activation is part of it, we feel like you may be creating more integration mess than you probably need. So our beliefs, that stack of beliefs and how we've been developing leads to conviction, what we build. I'm going to share a few things today of what we are building kind of right now is either released or is releasing. We're focused on easier onboarding. So a lot of, I was talking to Matt, who previously was a CTO at Merkle and knows a lot about integrating with other platforms, and he talked about buying a technology for $100 grand or $500 grand and then going to spend $1 million with a system integrator to get that technology to work. It's the whole product. Like if you bought an iPhone and you had to literally go down to the store to get them to set up for you, you just wouldn't buy it. We believe that onboarding is part of the product, and it works because that digital maturation curve means you're going to continue onboarding in various ways throughout your time with us. So we're spending a lot of time with things like data mapping and making easy connectors. In fact, I think we've got 130 new connectors that we're adding on to what we have today. So following from onboarding is data governance, no longer an add-on. And this is one simple example of data governance. Actually, there's two examples here. We believe the chief privacy officer needs a dashboard too, and it can't be decoupled from your data because, again, too many gaps, those orange integration pieces. You want to know that if you're ingesting data, that you might have risk with it. Data is a risk management a challenge. You can buy another platform for it, but I believe it takes you out of the jobs to be done, and it decouples the people that, say you've got a data manager that's working with a campaign manager. The campaign manager says, I need this. And he says, okay, great, I'll go get it from another database somewhere. They might have just inadvertently opened up a risk for you. And you can wait 6 months or 12 months for your audit, or you can catch it along the way and surface it. Forecasting and business outcomes. This one I'm really excited about. It's very extensible. A lot of you probably work on a calendar. Maybe you've got merchandise, maybe you've got inventory you're managing. You want to sell 6,000 pairs of shoes, but you don't really want to sell 10,000 pairs of shoes, but you also have to hit your revenue number. You got to hit it halfway through the month and all the way through the month, because these are real businesses with real business outcomes. This is a dashboard that's coming out that'll give you a forecasted, expansive view across all channels by timeline, so you can do your planning. It's that simple. You can go talk to your CEO and say, hey, I think with reasonable confidence that we can drive $10.8 million in January. How are we doing in other parts of the business? I can try and amp it up. Let me go run some analysis in it. And this becomes an operational tool that is tied to what a lot of marketers are doing, which is driving revenue for the business. CTV is an area of explosive growth for Zeta, and we're really excited to have direct response in CTV, and we're working on a very exciting project right now where you literally take your CTV assets and you get audio assets for free. Everybody listens to podcasts. Well, most people listen to podcasts or audiobooks. It's a great medium for us, and we want to give people, again, that simplicity of just very simply saying, hey, here's my asset. Click. It's also an audio. And then you could do omni-channel campaigns that are going to catch us where we're living, catch us in our moments. For this to work, it has to be tied back to the individual, and it gets back to the point I made earlier that a channel strategy is nice, but channels devoid of a unifying identity play start to make your business feel a little bit chaotic. And last, a single pane of glass, something Steve Gerber has been asking for quite some time. We've got individualized dashboards that are real, that are highly flexible. Effectively, any report that can be created, either in our platform or elsewhere, like in a Looker, can be pinned to the dashboard to build the view you need. What we're excited about here is that analytics and reporting is a hard thing to keep up with. Everybody has unique needs, and so we've created a strategy that allows us to flex to the needs of individual businesses so that when you're buying a piece of software, it's not half of what you need or a quarter of what you need. You mold it around your needs, which is an ongoing piece. So those are 5 projects we're working on right now. We've got something we call the launch box that we released that you can sign up for if you haven't already. It gives you a lot more detail over the work that we're doing. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, have a customer advisory board that gets deep into it. I'm going to invite my esteemed coworker and good friend Matt up to talk about how all this gets applied, including a case study, and then I'll join you for what we're doing going forward. Matt.
All right, so Chris was talking to the technology platform side of it. It's interesting. The tech's important, obviously, but in a world and sort of a crowded market into it, you really have to find the partners that think of it a little bit just beyond the feature and function list of what goes into the technology platform. It's one of the reasons why when I came out of Merkle, and I think he tells a story. Merkle makes its money from the services side of these businesses. So the more integration that has to happen around these techs, the more opportunity is for organizations like a Merkle or like an Accenture or Deloitte or all of these players to come in because they build businesses around those gaps that sort of exist out there. And I think if we approached it and looked at it, which is we understand sort of the top level of these things, not only the feature and function list of what we have to accomplish, but actually understand what we're trying to accomplish as a marketing organization in there, you end up with a little bit of a different mindset that you end up with a platform of where Zeta sort of aims at, which is this notion of a singular integrated platform that can fit in with the rest of the stack as needed, but also provides you a core of what you can base all of those sort of capabilities that are on there. So, just to go back 1 second out of the technology, the challenge to it is that marketers today, as we're trying to deal with, sort of the digital consumer out there and the constant disruptions from everything from up-and-comers coming into the marketplace all the way out into how you think about the impact of COVID and all of those pieces that were out there. It presents a huge issue for us. And really what we spend our time doing as we look at it, is we're trying to basically have a capability that allows us to focus on really two axes out there. We're trying to mature our marketing strategy to meet this sort of, this new consumer that's in there. We're trying to mature our technology strategy as we go to do it. But I think the problem is where we sit many a times that if we mature too far on one of these axes out there, it actually creates a challenge for us. If we mature, became highly, our marketing strategy matures beyond our technology, we get into a spot where we can't necessarily realize the value for those things. And if we get to a point where we actually mature our technology strategy too far, there we go. As we mature our technology strategy too far, we get to a spot where effectively we're going to have unrealized, we're going to have a lack of ROI to all of those investments to it. So we're in a spot where we have to figure out a set of technologies and capabilities as we think about our strategy where we can align these sort of strategic objectives and grow them and mature them at sort of the same rate as we go into these things. So that's, when we think about the platform, we think about the ability to have sophisticated marketing strategy and a simply, implemented sort of platform and capability that's out there for those pieces. I think the other side to it is as we get into these areas in order to overcome sort of the issues to it is we also have to think about how we look at, data and insights, driving our strategy and how we look at, ultimately, how we're operationalizing those data and insights to those strategies. So when we think about that technology platform, we think about the capabilities that Chris is in there. It's not only about implementing the strategy, but also operationalizing all that. I mean, back in the day, I've been building marketing databases since the late 90s that's in there. We were really damn good data managers, for a long period of time. And it wasn't until, this sort of new age, as we think of CDPs coming in, that we really got focused on what is the more important part, which is how do we operationalize that data and insight in order to drive value at the point in time someone sort of engages with us. I think the challenge, as we look at sort of conquering this problem is what Chris sort of talked about. This is many times the investments that we make relative to our solutions to those things. And we have to think about, how we buy 50 pieces of technology. Some of us own 3 CDPs, if you didn't know that. 2.4 is like the average for organizations, which is a bit shocking as we go through those things. But how do we take all of these sort of technologies and sort of bring it together? And so when we think about simplified ability to implement a marketing strategy, ability to have a simplified stack in order to go do it, that's where we think about from our, our capability when we think about Zeta. Features and functions are important, but operability, integration, onboarding, all of these things become, really a mantra as we drive through, because what we know is if we get this right, we can give you the ROI return relative to, your maturity and give you the ability to execute and get all the value out of effectively what you're trying to do with your consumers and with the businesses as a whole. So that's the top level. I'll talk a little bit as we think about, sort of an example here. CTS, Christmas Tree Shops that we have, is one of our customers to these things. They did, I think a lot of the case studies, we always focus sort of down at this sort of level, and we say, hey, listen, they had great return with their marketing strategy. How much of it is the tech? It's the enablement part of it, but also part of it's the strategy in which they use to go to implement those type of things. I think some of the things that come out to it is as we think of that sort of investment in there, Christmas Tree Shops is a Snowflake customer. So if you're a Snowflake, if you're an applier of Snowflake, you're looking at the entire data mesh, data model that you're having. How are you easily accessing data and actually moving it between systems to them? Do you have technology that fits in with a data architecture that allows you to leave data in place without necessarily having to move it? So you don't have to go through building data pipelines. How do you minimize that cost of data transformation and that sort of data effort that's out there? Critical when we looked and talked to the CTS side of the house. The other thing is that when they look at a platform relative to Zeta, they also took out 3 other ESPs. They took out other technology that was in there. So it simplified the model of the stack while still achieving the outcomes that they need as a business. So we definitely have to tackle both sides of those things. And we have to be very mindful as we look at going in there, because that's ultimately where the name of the game is. We can go in and achieve these things in a very complicated stack, but it drives our cost up in order to achieve those things. It creates a lot more risk as we think of our capabilities to actually implement those sort of capabilities that are out there. So on whole, when we look at it, great from a marketing objectives, but there's the underlying piece that we really have to sort of focus on as we go through there. So I'll bring Chris back up a little bit here, and he'll talk about where we're going from it.
I love that guy. Thanks, Matt. Looking ahead, so we've got some big pieces we're working on. Creative Suite, and we're not going to undercut the Figma acquisition for $40 billion. Teams have creative workflows today. One of the challenges is that you can create anything with beautiful design and hardworking designers. Individualizing it has not been solved adequately. And this idea of a one-to-one communication pattern sounds great on a slide, it sounds great in a talk, but how do you generate creative that delivers on individuals? So whether that's analyzing the creative you've already made or creating a personalization editor for the web that works across channels for individuals' likes, our Creative Suite is harnessed by the data underpinnings and our machine learning pipeline. Speaking of machine learning, MLOps. This is another label. There's probably people from the CIO department or IT department that are like, oh yeah, I need an MLOps or AutoML platform as well. We consider this a precursor to do the jobs that you need to do and are going to expose it through the platform so that you can author, manage, test, and apply your machine learning scoring for decisioning, for intent. Part of the reason we're doing it is for our own internal workflows, because our teams are working on building unique models for our customers every day. Not every out-of-the-box model works, as probably most of you know. And this makes it a lot easier to manage fit, to manage outcomes, and probably most importantly, testing. We have spent a lot of time and in the early days got a lot of patents on AI testing to make sure that models are competing against each other. We want to enable your teams to do it as well. This also brings data scientists into the fold, into the actual workflow of the jobs you're doing day in and day out. They no longer have to be down a dark hallway with a tinfoil hat on, which is what they do to me at Zeta. Intelligent goals, wouldn't it be nice? So if we know your goals and we have all the data and we have all the curriculum that's driven outcomes, we know how much revenue you ran last month to sell your shoes, wouldn't it be nice if we could just help you along with those goals and actually hone them in, what we think you're capable of doing, and then give you one click to do it? One click is the big piece, and we do a lot of agile intelligence here. I hope everybody gets a chance to listen to Nish today on his panels. Agile intelligence allows us to take those goals to reality with one click. That system of insight and system of engagement I spoke to earlier gets smushed right together inside our platform. Scenario planning. What we've learned in experiences is a lot of people want to build experiences and then they're left saying, I hope it works. I hope I'm not leaving anything by the wayside. So they'll put a shopping cart abandonment series together or even a welcome series together. And maybe they'll put 2 or 3 branches on it and let it run. They may or may not come back to it, and they manage by the KPI. Okay, I've got a 20% conversion rate. That's good enough for me. What about all the other things you could do? What about all the other channels you could use? What about all of the other personalization and individualization you could use? We're applying that same forecasting and ML models to allow you to understand outcomes before you get started and start to have more dexterity. Testing is the lifeblood of this industry. You got to know what works. We should be able to mock that data up and give you ideas ahead of time. And last, digital dialogue. This is something that we continue to prototype with. My bank, when I can interact with them via my cell phone, via text message, my blood pressure goes down. I hate calling airlines. If they can prompt me through my mobile app and I can have the conversation there, my blood pressure goes down. The answers to my most pressing questions shouldn't have me wait on hold, and they should be infinitely available. That's on the consumer side. I believe the same thing is true for the marketer side. Like when you're in a platform, you should be able to ask a question. What was my most engaged audience? And we should be able to look at all the thousands of features, all the thousands of data points we have on individuals, and say, your most engaged customer is the one that has a proclivity to buy sleepwear. And you'd say, wow, I didn't even think about sleepwear. I'm a rideshare company. I didn't know that had anything to do with drivers. And it will help you do the micro-segmentation that we all dream to do, but it's doing it across a lot more vertices than what you've had access to before then. So I want to end on one big note. It actually came up last Zeta Live. Somebody came up to me right after a presentation like this, and they said, Chris, this is all great, but I've got 200 people on my team, and they had happened to have just started working with us, and they said, I'm afraid like half of them need a different job now. In their case, they didn't need they had 8 data engineers that ran segmentation in Unica, and they passed those segments over to the marketing team. It's like, I just don't need that team anymore. What do I do? And this is a note if we're gonna do it a new way, we don't wanna just migrate the old patterns. We wanna think really constructively about how we want our teams to work together, because they've got a treasure trove of information. They've been doing this for a long time. There's an intuition, or what we used to talk about as a feel for your consumer. You just kind of know them. You need the data to back it up and to make a bet. If you're going to go spend $5 million on Facebook or on direct mail, you got to have some data to back it up. You need a feel for it. And so reorganizing that organization, your organization, is part of doing it in a new way. And I think I don't think it's just an opportunity for more ROI for your business. I actually think it's part of our legacies to reconstruct the way that we work together and really think like business owners. We've got the tools to do it. And this is something that's really exciting and emerging for us in the discussions that we're having. How we get here. I've talked a little bit about the customer advisory board and the feedback we get from them, big and small. Very literally, the smallest things that come out of the customer advisory board sometimes have the biggest impact, and we retain a bunch of our roadmap to work on those items. When we sign new customers, they say, hey, I'd really like it a certain way. And we keep a certain amount of our roadmap to deliver on those as well. And they may not be on the customer advisory board, but they'll have a great idea. I've gotten a few of those this week here. We work closely with analysts. Analysts are really smart. They look at all the platforms. They talk to all the customers. They all have a slightly different bend to their vantage, but have been important to us. And then this one's a big one for us. We do top-down and bottoms-up planning. We have, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, hundreds of people at Zeta that have been doing this almost their whole professional life, and they know what's going on. And sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. We like to think that Zeta's been successful and got those analyst ratings because we work really closely with our customers, as seen here. And so it's something we're co-authoring together. It's co-developed. We're not doing it in isolation. So we talked a lot about taking the complexity out of the very sophisticated jobs that you all have and giving you the tools to do it today. I'm excited to continue working with you and would love to answer any questions you have. I want to thank Matt for his time up here and all of your time joining us at Zeta Live today. Thank you very much.